The NHL preseason is underway, which means a new season is right around the corner. And with the new season comes extremely ridiculous takes and way too early end of the year predictions. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Josh Bartosik, joined alongside Anthony Desher and Justin Ciavolella, and we are here to give you our NHL early season hot takes. So, guys, this past offseason was one of the busiest we've seen, lots of money being thrown around, and the dust has finally settled, and there's obviously those clear-cut teams everyone thinks are going to be at the top, but every year there's about one or two teams that really throws us for a loop. So, Desher, I'll start with you. What's one team that really is going to be a surprise this season?
I want to go to the Atlantic Division. I think Detroit has improved a lot this offseason. Yzerman and his Yzer plan. If you're with him and he's your GM, it's a great time to be a fan of that team. He brings in David Perron. Andrew Kopp gets a good deal. He got Ben Sherratt and Dominic Kubalik. A lot of guys who can fill in some spots in that lineup, both offense and defense. They've got a lot of depth now. I know the Atlantic is a very tough division. I know Boston has a couple of injuries that, could cause them to slip. I know Krejci's back, but I don't think that's going to really recover the loss of Marchand and McAvoy for a while. You have your top guys like Tampa Bay and Toronto if they ever make it past the first round. And the Senators, they're really improving too. They got Claude Giroux, DeBrincat, Norris is looking really good as well. So if Detroit works out everything and everything can really start clicking for them, they could make a case for maybe that last wildcard spot.
Yeah, and from a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2016 to a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2011, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Sabres. They have a young core, number 1 overall pick, Owen Powers. He played 8 games last season, and he brought the energy, or maybe I should say power, to that Buffalo team. They have a young core with Rasmus Dahlin, Dylan Cousins. Tage Thompson led the team with 38 goals last season. Their one question mark could be the goaltending. It's 41-year-old Craig Anderson in net, allowed 3.12 goals against on average last season, but they did pick up Eric Comrie from Winnipeg, who was very solid in his small sample size last season. You also look at the other veteran pieces on the Buffalo Sabres team. Joe Skinner, Kyle Oposo both put up over 20 goals, last season. And what this screams to me is just like another team in their city. The Buffalo Bills built their team the exact same way that this Sabre team has made it, and I could easily see them sneaking into the playoffs for the first time since 2011.
Chevy, I have to agree. I love those puns. I'm just so glad that they've been brought onto Penn State Sports Night. But moving on from the teams, and obviously the NHL and hockey is a team sport, but we always love to talk about certain players. And there's always, those players that are going to be in the conversation for some awards or maybe some guys that, have down years. So, Justin, I'll throw it to you this time. What's one player that you think could surprise a lot of people this year?
Same cadre, new team, or same old cadre back to before last season? Last season was a fluke for Nazem Kadri. Out of nowhere, put up career highs in points and assists to go along with 28 goals. And now he leaves the Colorado Avalanche, who might have the most amount of talent in this league. So he goes to Calgary, who got rid of Tkachuk, now Jonathan Huberdeau, Elias Lindholm. And you look at Kadri, who's going to be anchoring that second line, and the point production is going to slip because Calgary does not have the same amount of talent that Colorado does. So when you go to Kadri, yes, he might be the same player. Well, he might not be the same from last season. He's going to go back to his old self, regress a little bit, and that 7-year, $7 million annual contract, it's not going to work out for Calgary. And the Flames, they might not be too hot this year.
Well, you want to talk about a dip in point production. Let's go to Columbus and Johnny Gaudreau. Big guy with the Flames, a very important piece to that top line. You have Elias Lindholm, you have Matthew Tkachuk. A lot of those guys were either 82 points, a point-per-game player, or over 100 points. And you see Gaudreau and you see all the rumors of Philadelphia, the Islanders, the Devils. He wants to come home. He wants to be, near his family. And then Columbus comes up and he signs with Columbus. And that's the first time that really a player wanted to go to Columbus. I remember the offseason, that was a lot of talks were about Columbus, why would he go there? No one wants to go there. Well, you kind of look at the talent they have. I don't think it's good enough, and that's why I think that Gaudreau is going to drop off. You have Patrick Laine. He can be really streaky at times. He can score, but in bunches. And you have Boone Jenner he's probably going to center that line. You go from Elias Lindholm to Boone Jenner. The talent's just not there at the same time. I don't think Gaudreau is going to be as high as he normally was. I think he's going to have maybe 20 points less. I'm seeing 80 points for Gaudreau. That's still good. That's still basically a point per game. But with the talent that Columbus has, they just don't have that scoring touch just yet. Maybe in a couple of years, they'll figure out how to get it done.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting decision by Gaudreau to willingly move to Columbus, Ohio, out of all places. And it's a team that, a lot of people didn't really expect to make such a big move like that, considering that they were in the middle of a rebuild. But we're going to go to some teams that probably are not going to be in a rebuild for a while, and those are our Stanley Cup contenders. Obviously, there can only be one team on top at the end. Anthony, I'll throw it back to you for this one. Who is your way too early Stanley Cup winner?
Well, way too early Stanley Cup winner is going to be the exact same Stanley Cup winner as last year. And I know repeats are hard to do, but you've seen them more common over the past decade. 2016 and 2017, you had the Penguins. 2020 and 2021, you had the Tampa Bay Lightning. And you see the talent that this Colorado Avalanche team has. Makar, Flyers fans, I know Cal Makar, I know the story, don't bring it up, it makes me sad too. You have Nathan MacKinnon, who just signed a mega deal, and I see him as using that as motivation to score even more points because he deserves every penny of that contract. Mikko Rantanen, of course, he's a great player on that line. Gabriel Landeskog is going to miss some time at the beginning of the season, but he'll be back and he'll be great. The scoring touch they have going down the middle, especially with younger guys like Alex Nowak, will really look to improve as Nazem Kadri is off that second line. And you see this younger guys, they're going to take more expanded roles, and I think they're going to flourish off of them. And in the back end, with Cal Makar, best defenseman in the league, Norris Trophy. I know Flyers fans, let's not talk about this, but they just look in really good shape. The only problem I have right now is their goaltending with Alex Georgiev and Pavel Francouz. Who is really going to, be the main guy? I know there is. I know last year when they did win the Cup, Darcy Kemper, he wasn't on his A game all the time, but it was good enough for them to win the Cup. If you can get something similar out of that team and, you can have some pretty decent goalie play, I think they have a really good chance at repeating this year.
Well, I like the pick. I think Kadri, very replaceable on that team. Like I just said, his production was a little bit of a fluke and because of the talent that was around him. So for my Stanley Cup winner, I'm going to Edmonton. I'm going to Canada, the home of hockey, which has not had a Stanley Cup since 1993. What are we doing, Canada? Well, the Edmonton, that offense looked unstoppable at times in the postseason. Evander Kane came out of nowhere. Obviously, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. You just have a ton of talent on that team. Sure, maybe questions with their goaltending last season. Well, what do you do when there's questions about something? You go in the offseason and replace it. And that's exactly what they did with getting Jack Campbell from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Very solid for Toronto last season. Yeah, it's Toronto. They always fail. But Campbell, he wasn't the reason for their failure last year. I think he comes in, he plays very well for the Oilers. They change around that narrative around their goaltending. They have solid defensive pieces along with the offensive pieces I just talked about. And Canada, they're going to see a Stanley Cup, a real one, not just a fake one, at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think those are two very good picks. Obviously, these two teams played each other in the Western Conference Final this past season. Colorado kind of walked over Edmonton without really any trouble. It was easy to see that the main factor, like you mentioned, Justin, was Mike Smith. I think everyone that knows me personally knows that I am the biggest Mike Smith hater, and I'm glad that the Oilers finally figured that out. And, who knows, maybe that can finally propel them over the edge because, realistically, it's been too long of a drought. Canada needs their Stanley Cup. The NHL preseason has only just begun, and yet hockey fans around the league are brimming with anticipation for this upcoming season. Well, minus Flyers and Islanders fans, no offense to either of you two. But no matter who comes out on top or what storylines unfold this season, it's surely going to be one to remember. That will do it for this edition of Penn State Sports Night. For Anthony Desher and Justin Ciavolella, I'm Josh Bartosik. We thank you for watching, and as always, have a great rest of your night.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.